This is Living in Alignment, and I am your host, Amy Starr Allen. On this show, I will bring you simple strategies, inspiring interviews, and my own personal insights to help you discover what it means to live your life and run a business from a place of true alignment. My goal is to help you give up the struggle and help you to see that life and business can be easy when we live and act from a place of intuition and inspiration. This and all episodes of this show can be found on my website at amystarallen.com. Enjoy the show. Hello. Welcome back to the Living in Alignment podcast. So good to be back here with you guys. And I have a special episode for you today. So as promised, I am going to be sharing with you my experience with plant medicine, with ayahuasca. And if you listened to a couple of episodes ago, in episode 53, I shared about the backstory of what led up to me going to Colorado to do ayahuasca for the first time. So if you haven't listened to that yet, you can still listen to this without listening to that. But if you want to hear the backstory and why I ended up going to Colorado and how my dad suggested it to me and meeting up with my dad's friend and all of the things that led up to it, literally years worth of research, not being ready, and then becoming ready. All of that is in episode 53. So if you're interested in hearing that, you can go back and listen to that episode. It's a pretty short episode, but it'll really, help you to better understand my process. And then I promised that after I went to Colorado and had my ayahuasca journey, that I would record another podcast to let you know how it goes. So that's what this episode is going to be about today. And I've been sitting with this. I got back a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't want to record it right away because I wanted to give myself time to allow the medicine to continue to integrate. It does that for a few weeks. It stays in your system. And it just took me a while, honestly, to get my feet back on the ground when I got back here. And I've just been processing a lot and wanted to just kind of wait in case there might be more to share than if I just, got back and immediately recorded the episode. So I've been waiting, and I've had so many people reach out to me that want to know the details of my experience. And it's really hard to share the details over and over and over again with every single person. And so I figured this would be the best way to just really record it in as much depth as I can. And then everybody can, that's interested can listen to it and get what they need here. And so this, will be helpful if you're considering doing plant medicine and you don't know what to expect. I mean, again, this is my experience. This is nobody else's experience. But when I was considering doing plant medicine, one of the things I did and still do is I started listening to a lot of podcasts by people that have had experience with it, or that were interviewing people that had experience with it, because I just wanted to better understand the pros and cons and the potential outcomes and all of the things. And so, if you're in that state, this could be helpful for you. Or if you've done plant medicine and you just want to know what my experience was like in comparison to yours, or whatever, I'm hopeful that this will find its way to the people that want it and need it. So that is my goal today. And I've been kind of thinking about the best way to share this, because there really is so much to say. And I don't want to say too much, but at the same time, I want to make sure I do a thorough job. I was looking back in my journal. So I journal every day. You may or may not know, but one of my processes is I do a verse of the Tao Te Ching every single day, and I journal about it. And I also share my notes with a friend of mine, and we go back and forth with our notes about that. So I have that stuff is always in my journal, but I also, journal about whatever else is coming up for me. And so getting ready to go on this trip, I definitely had a lot of emotions coming up for me, and some other stuff that came up, a phone call that I received. I have a lot of this stuff in my journal. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go through and share with you a couple of the things that came up for me before I got on the plane, just because I think it's all part of the process for me. I think I shared in the last episode about my nerves, how nervous I was leading up to this trip. And this was years in the making, this trip. And then when it was finally coming down to, a couple of days before it was time to go or whatever, when I recorded that last podcast episode of it with the backstory, I was starting to get really, really nervous. And a lot of stuff was coming up for me. And that continued right up until the ceremony. It actually continued so I did 2 nights worth of ceremonies. I went to the place where I did the ceremony. I got there on Friday evening and I was there until Sunday. So Friday night and Saturday night we did ceremonies. And so we spent all day Saturday together, and even after the first ceremony, all day Saturday, I had a lot of nervous energy as well. So I'll be sharing more about that as I go through. I'm going to go through this in the order of events, but my nerves were definitely a thing leading up to this. I would definitely say that is one of the things that has significantly changed after having had this experience with ayahuasca, because I now know what to expect. I have an experience with it, and it was a lot different, way different than what I expected in a lot of ways. And they always say she will give you what you need, not necessarily what you want, but she will give you exactly what you need. And I do believe that's true. I believe I was given exactly what I needed, and it wasn't at all what I expected to get. And I'll say more about that. The day before I left, I got a call from a dear friend of mine, a woman that I love and respect dearly. She's in her 80s. Her name is Mama Elizabeth. She's in a community that I'm a part of. And she called me to tell me that she's thinking about me, getting ready to go on my journey. And then this is what she said. She said, enjoy everything that God puts in front of you. If anything is bothering you, let it roll out into the ocean of love and mercy. You have people to see, things to do, and so many blessings to share with people. Put God first. Stop trying to do it on your own. You are in training. And then she said, I'm not sure where that came from, but that's what I have for you today. And so I just want to say thank you to Mama Elizabeth. And I always say she's a sage. Like, she is so wise, and everything that she says is always so meaningful. And that was so helpful for me because, I was trying to do it alone. I think a lot of us are often trying to do things alone, and we forget that we're not alone. And I will also say that is one of the biggest things that I got in my ayahuasca journey, was really learning that at a cellular level. So that was awesome. And then I have another journal entry from the day that I flew out, and I was talking about how I'm excited and nervous. I'm feeling excited and nervous and loved and ready. And I said I have 2 beautiful grounding necklaces and a bracelet, all given to me by Brooklyn for power, balance, and protection. And I have so many emotions happening at once. So my friend Brooklyn, I think I shared about this in the last episode, but she went a month before me to do her journey. And she gave me these 2 beautiful necklaces and a bracelet that I wore the entire time. I actually have them on right now. I've been wearing them every day since she gave them to me, with black obsidian and tiger's eye, like just grounding stones. And the one necklace has a phoenix rising out of the ashes. She told me that's what I was going to do. And so I wear that to remind myself about the work that I'm doing and who I am. And it's super meaningful to me. And I feel super grateful for her and to be on this healing journey with her. Her and I are, actually going through some similar challenges in our lives right now. So we've become super close, and I just feel so, so, so grateful to have somebody that I can talk to, that understands my life, and that is also on a similar healing path. So that felt really good. I felt really loved. I got this package like the night before I left, and then that morning before I got on the plane, I had read verse 2 of the Tao Te Ching. So I'm going through the book now for the 3rd time. There's 81 verses, and I've done all 81 verses 2 times through, and I'm on my 3rd time through. The day that I'm recording this podcast episode, I'm on verse 22, but on the day that I was flying out, I was on verse 2. And the main takeaway that I recorded in my journal that day was just be. And I said, I will just be, and I will trust, and I will surrender. And, it's interesting that I wrote this. It's interesting looking back at this now. This is the first time I'm looking back at it since the day that I wrote it, just because I took it, I decided to flip back today since I'm recording this episode. And so much of my journey, which I'll share with you, and what I got from Mother Ayahuasca on my journey was about trusting and surrendering and just being. So it's amazing that was my biggest takeaway from the Tao Te Ching that morning, and how that all came into the journey for me. Then I was on the plane and I watched a movie. I don't even remember what the movie was called, but I actually wrote some things in my journal, some takeaways from the movie. It was kind of a love story, and it had to do, there was like some cooking involved. So some of the things that I wrote down were based around cooking, but I wrote them in my journal because to me, they have to do with life in every way. So I'll just read you a few of those notes. The risk of love is loss really stood out to me. I feel like, when we've been hurt in our lives, one of the things that we tend to do to protect ourselves is we put up these walls and these barriers, and we're afraid to let people in, and we're afraid to fully love anybody. And, I learned a long time ago, thanks to my dear uncle who has had so much loss in his life. And I actually asked him about this a while ago, about how does he continue to love people on such a deep level when he's lost so many people and he's had so much loss in his life. And he told me, you can't live life to the fullest unless you allow yourself to love to the fullest that you can possibly love people. That's what life is all about. And so I love this. The risk of love is loss. Like, that's a risk we always take when we open up our hearts. And it was such a good reminder for me that day on the plane. I wrote down something, love versus strategy. And she was talking about baking. She was baking something, and she said, it tastes good when it's baked with love and not strategy. And I think this has to do with a lot of things in our lives as well. Like, if we're trying to be strategic about everything and we're forgetting to put our hearts into things, it's never going to land the same way. And that has to do with our relationships as well as our businesses. So I love that. Another thing that I wrote down was people overlook the shadows, but that's where we can find the beauty in life. I love this because plant medicine is largely about shadow work. A lot of the work that we do with plant medicine has to do with being willing to look at the shadows so that we can heal them. And that's the thing that was the scariest thing about doing ayahuasca for me, was being, having to see the shadows in my life and to address those and to hear what she has to say about that. And when I say she, just in case you're not familiar with ayahuasca, the plant ayahuasca is known as grandmother ayahuasca or mother ayahuasca. So some people call her mother, some people call her grandmother. Aya is, for short. But the plant has a spirit to it. And so mother ayahuasca comes to us, or grandmother ayahuasca, whichever one you want to call it, mother Aya, comes to us during our journey and guides us and teaches us and often gives us tough love and helps us along our way. And this is one of the things that I was most called to about ayahuasca, was that it's not just like a psychedelic where you're just like seeing, hallucinating and whatever. It's really about connecting with this spirit that comes through from this plant. And that was really attractive to me. And I shared in the last episode as well that I learned the difference between a psychedelic and a hallucinogenic. So that was the other piece. Like, a hallucinogenic is something that makes you see things that aren't there, whereas a psychedelic like ayahuasca is a soul revealer. So it helps you to see into your soul. It helps you to better understand your soul. And so that's kind of the difference about that. But I love this. People overlook the shadows, but that's where we can find the beauty in life. And I think that's why so many people get such huge benefit from doing shadow work and plant medicine that has to do with shadow work, because we have to look at the shadows to be able to see the beauty. So I love that. And I love that I was getting this from a movie on the plane on my way to go to my ayahuasca ceremony. So I shared in the last episode as well, like I've always found that when I'm up to big things in my life, when I go on a big journey or I'm about to go into like a big personal development seminar or something like that, it starts working before you actually get there. Like once you commit and register, usually that's when stuff starts surfacing. And then as you get closer, it gets more and more intense. So I think that's kind of what was happening on my journey. Was I was on the plane. I just chose a lighthearted movie because that's all I really want to put into my psyche these days. And I was getting all of these like profound teachings out of this lighthearted movie on my way to go do my shadow work with ayahuasca. So I thought that was really cool. Make decisions with my heart, not my head. This is something I talk about a lot, and I love that that came up in the movie as well. One other thing it said is don't think about the mess, focus on the outcome. And again, she was talking about, I believe this was from a scene in the movie where she had like trashed the kitchen trying to cook this meal, and her boyfriend came home and was upset about the mess that she had made in the kitchen. And she said, don't think about the mess, focus on the outcome, like she was making this beautiful meal. But I think this is so true for us in our lives as well. Like we often we're in a mess in our lives and we're looking at the mess and we're so focused on the mess that we forget about the potential outcome. And so I think this is such a good reminder. Like we have to go through the messes. We have to have messes in our lives and we have to walk through those to get to our desired outcome. So don't focus on the mess, focus on the outcome. Okay, so then I arrived in Colorado and I went and was picked up by some of my friends who I stayed with. And I usually stay in Boulder because that's where I lived for 25 years. And it's my home, my heart, and I have a lot of friends there. And so I stayed with some of my friends there. I arrived on Wednesday night. My ceremony started on Friday. So I had, all day on Thursday to spend with a couple of my best friends there. I was feeling super nervous, but I was just really enjoying my time back in Colorado with my friends. Again, my ceremony was going to be on Friday evening. And so my friend was going to drive me there. And as I shared in the last episode, I was supposed to be meeting up with a good friend of my dad's who is the one that kind of helped me along the way, figuring out where to go do this. And he's, was going to be doing it with me that weekend. So that was a big part of my decision-making process and helped me to feel safe and not alone and all of those things. And right before I was getting ready to go, so I spent Thursday night with my friends and all day Friday, and then had a nice breakfast at one of my friends' houses. And then I had to start fasting by 2:00 on Friday. I had to be done eating. I don't know if you're familiar with this part of ayahuasca, but it does cause you to purge. And not only that, but you're supposed to stop eating and refrain from eating certain foods for like the week leading up to it as well, so that the medicine can find its way, the best way to work in your body. So I had a nice breakfast with my friends on Friday and then had to stop eating. And then I was getting ready for my ceremony. And shortly before I was getting ready to go, I got a text from my dad's friend telling me he wasn't going to be there on Friday. He said, I will be there tomorrow night, but I won't be there tonight. Sorry about that. And my heart sunk. I was like, oh no, because he was part of like my comfort in the whole process, knowing he was going to be there. And again, if you want more of the backstory on who he is and how that came to be, you can listen to the episode 53. And I go into a lot more about that. But so that was, something that came up that made me sad and nervous. And then the other thing that had come up was that, so originally one of the draws to me to this particular location to do the ayahuasca was that it was going to be like kind of in the mountains, in a house, kind of secluded with a river behind it or whatever. And a couple of days before I left on my trip, the location got switched. So I was kind of bummed about that because it was getting moved to like a location where it was going to be just a completely different setting. And so again, I have had this experience so many times where when big things are about to happen, all of these things show up that feel like obstacles or setbacks or disadvantages in some way. And actually they're not. They're all here to serve us. And at first I was like disappointed about, my dad's friend not being there on Friday and then the location switch and all these things, but it all ended up being a benefit in the long run, right? But sometimes it's hard to see that in the moment. Anyway, I ended up, the medicine man that was leading the ceremony reached out to me the night before. And originally, you're supposed to bring a mattress. Usually everybody, does the ceremony on a mattress, a little mattress or a mat, camping mat or something that you bring. And then everybody like sleeps in their spot and you bring all that stuff with you. So I was planning on borrowing all of that stuff from my friend that I was staying with. And she had like an air mattress and all the stuff that she was going to give me. But then the night before my ceremony, I heard from the man that was leading the ceremony, and he said, don't worry about bringing anything. Since you're coming from out of town, I'm going to give you your own bedroom. So you're going to have a bed to sleep in and you don't need to bring any bedding at all. And so I was thinking about the ceremony itself. I know I'm going to be sleeping in a bedroom, but for the ceremony, I'll be in the room with everybody. And so I reached back out and I'm like, do I need anything for the ceremony? Do I need any like blankets or anything? And he said, nope, everything's handled. Don't worry about anything. So I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. And then my friend was driving me to the ceremony and we stopped at Walgreens because my friend that had done it the month before me recommended that I bring earplugs and a couple of other things. So we stopped at Walgreens and my friend pulled into the parking lot. She had to like cut over to a different lane on the road. She was like driving like a bat out of hell. And we pull into the parking lot and she pulls in like diagonally in more than one parking spot. The reason that's significant is because on my way back to the car after we went into Walgreens, I found something on the ground that I would not have found if she had parked straight in a parking spot. The only reason I saw it was because the part of the parking spot that would have been covered by the car wasn't covered. And it was this little thing that said karma on it. It was like a little piece of metal, like almost like a charm from a necklace or I don't know, but it said karma. And I thought, well, that's pretty bizarre that I just found that in the parking lot and only because of the way that her car was parked, right? And so I texted a picture of it to my friend that had done the ceremony the month before me. And she texted back, she said, oh boy, buckle up. And I was like, oh my goodness. So anyway, that was kind of cool. And then when I got to the place where the ceremony was going to be, when we were like everybody was starting to set up their spots for the ceremony. And I didn't have anything with me to set it up because he told me not to bring anything. And so in that moment, he kind of realized, oh yeah, I should have told you to like bring something to do your ceremony on. And this other guy that was there. So basically what happened was that anybody that was staying for both Friday night and Saturday night, he gave their own bedroom. This house was huge. It had like 6 bedrooms or something. And there were a total of 10 of us. So there were 5 of us who were there for both nights, Friday and Saturday. And then there were 3 people that came just for Friday and 3 people that came just for Saturday, and then the 2 facilitators. So there were basically 8 of us each night. And out of the 8, 5 of us were staying for 2 nights. And so those of us that were staying for 2 nights, he gave us each our own bedroom. Anyone that was just there for 1 night didn't get a bedroom and they just had to sleep in their spot in the ceremony room. So this guy that was there for just Friday night, nicest guy ever, and it wasn't his first time, but when he overheard the conversation about me not having anything, he's like, I want you to have my mattress. And I was like, no, I can't take your mattress. You need your mattress. And he's like, no, I want you to have it. He's like, I want you to be as comfortable as possible, especially since it's your first time. I insist. And so he gave me his mattress. and helped me set it up. And he said, but just so you know, I'm not staying tomorrow night. So that's also my bed tonight. So I knew that when the ceremony ended, I would be, leaving so that he could sleep there. And this probably sounds like it doesn't really matter right now, but it'll become more significant later as I get more into the story. But in any case, so he gave me this mattress and I set it up and everything was ready to go. And then we just, everybody was kind of unloading. We all brought food to share for breakfast in the morning, and everyone was just kind of introducing themselves and getting to know each other before the ceremony. And one other really, really, really cool side note that I just want to mention is that one of my best friends is going through some really huge challenges right now with her daughter has this really uncommon, intense illness that they've just been, it's just been a really hard process that their family has been going through. Well, it turns out that the guy that shared his mattress with me had recently healed himself, not completely, but very much so, from this exact thing using plant medicine. So when he started talking about this chronic illness and what it is and the symptoms and how he's been healing it with plant medicine, I asked him if the name of it was the same thing that my friend's daughter has, and he said yes. And I had never known anybody that even knew what this was before. So that was really cool. And he said, if there's anything that I can do to help your friend and her daughter, I want to do that. So that was like one of the very first things that happened to me when I walked into that house. And at that moment in time, I was kind of like, regardless of what else happens this weekend, like maybe that's why I came here, was to meet him, because maybe he has something that could help my friend's daughter, by sharing his story and his process and his perspective. So that was pretty miraculous in and of itself. And then, everybody was just kind of settling in and getting ready to start the ceremony. It always starts at sunset. So we had to wait till like after 8 o'clock at night. We finally got situated in our spots. I was so nervous. Like my nerves were through the roof. I literally did not know what to expect. I mean, I had a little bit of knowing what to expect just from all the research I had done, but there were a few of us who it was our first time. I think 4 of us, it was our first time. And the rest of the people, it was not their first time. So half and half. And so it was nice to be with other people who were also doing it for the first time, and to be with other people who were returning. Many had returned many times to sit with ayahuasca, or even to sit with this specific facilitator. So that made me feel really good about the process of plant medicine. It also made me feel really good about this specific facilitator, because, if he wasn't great at what he did, people wouldn't be coming back. He does ceremonies every month, and some people come every month. Some people come every other month. So I felt like I definitely had found a good facilitator. People love him. They return. And that made me feel really good. But my nerves were off the charts. So he kind of just explained to us how the evening was going to go. And he told us he's going to give us, he calls it he does it a little bit different than some facilitators, in the sense that he gives you what he calls a starter dose for people if it's your first time, so that you can see. He likes to just gauge how the medicine is going to work in your body. So basically he gives you a dose when we all start, and then he checks on you every hour for the first few hours to see if you want more. He doesn't like to throw people to the wolves. He explained to me when I had my interview with him on Zoom ahead of time that that's one of the things that he does differently, that some facilitators just give you a full dose and then there's no turning back, right? So he likes to kind of ease people in a little bit more. And so he had already explained that to me on Zoom, but he explained that to us, and he told us he's going to be checking on us to see if we want more, and that, we could ask for more. And then he warned us, if you take another dose later in the evening, what will happen is when the ceremony ends and everybody is done, you will still be in the medicine, likely, if you take a late dose. And that can be hard, because now you're doing it by yourself and everybody else is done. So he warned us about that, right from the beginning. And then one of the things we had to bring to the ceremony was our intention. Before every time you do a ceremony, before you do the ceremony, you set an intention, and you do that out loud, and everybody sets their intention out loud for what they want to get from the ceremony. So we went around in a circle and we each stated our intention. And then he went and prepared the medicine. And then once he came back with the medicine, he gave each person their cup with whatever dose was appropriate for them based on whether it was their first time or not or whatever. And then, he does kind of like a little blessing, and then we all drink the medicine at the same time. One thing I forgot to mention before we drank the medicine, and I think it was after our intentions, I can't remember if it was before or after our intentions, he offered us hape. Some people call it rape. It's spelled R-A-P-E, but it's pronounced either hape or rape, either way. And it's basically a type of tobacco that gets pushed up into your nose. They blow it through a thing, like they stick it into your nostril and then they blow really hard and it goes up. As my friend was explaining it ahead of time, it's optional. You don't have to do it, but she was like, it'll burn your skull. Like that's the way she explained it to me. So I was prepared for that. But when he was telling us about it and offering it to us, and he said it's totally optional, but it's really good for grounding. And because I was so super nervous, like my nerves were crazy. I was like, I don't think I was like noticeably shaking, but I know like the level of nervousness I had going on was through the roof. So I decided to do it, and it definitely burned. And one of the things that he said about that is if you do decide to do it, you have to do it in both nostrils, because some people, they'll get it in the first one and then they don't want to do the second one because it hurts. So he warned us ahead of time, if you do the first one, you have to do the second one. So anyway, I did it. It wasn't that bad. Like it actually really, really, really helped me. And, and then he gives you a bunch of tissues and you can blow it out of your nose and stuff like that. But whatever it did, it definitely helped to ground me. So that was the first thing that we did. And then we drank our medicine, and then he puts on the music. And so each night he would do a playlist of about 5 hours worth of music. And the music was such a huge part of the journey for everybody, both nights. And it was a different playlist for the first night than it was the second night, but the music is incredible. So it typically started out with like songs about ayahuasca, like kind of tribal music. And he had a drum, so he would do some drumming. He would sing along with some of the songs and so forth. But the music would kind of carry the ceremony in the sense that it would, some of the music would start to build and get like faster and more intense. And then it would start to slow down again and stuff like that. And it seemed to like perfectly coincide with where everybody was on their journey. At least it felt that way to me. But the music was definitely a huge, huge part of the experience for me. So on the first night, so this was my first time, again, I didn't know at all what to expect. And I will say, I think I said this in the previous episode where I was talking about leading up to this, but I've been sober for 25 years. So I haven't done anything mind altering at all in 25 years. And I have done a lot of hallucinogenics when I was in high school. I did a lot of like mescaline and acid and stuff, and all the time, like it was just what we did. And I would go to Grateful Dead concerts and all that, but I haven't done anything at all mind altering in 25 years. And so that was one of the things that was in my way about doing this. But I eventually got to a place where as I learned more and more about ayahuasca, and I learned that people actually use it to battle addiction. It's not addictive at all, which I wasn't worried about that. I was just worried about not feeling like I was in control after being sober for so long, and not ever for 1 second giving up any type of control to alcohol or drugs or anything. I was really nervous about that. So when he turns on the music and we all, it's basically you're sitting there in your space just waiting, or this is what I was doing, sitting in my space. Everybody was sitting in their space, And it's just listening to music and just kind of like waiting for something to happen, kind of as the medicine starts to do its work in your body. I'm not sure exactly how long it took, but eventually it started to kick in and I started seeing like kaleidoscope visuals that were like neon light, kind of like, I can't even explain it, but it was really, 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 really intense. And it really freaked me out in the beginning because it was the first time, like I said, in all of these years that I felt like I was out of control. My first thought was, there's no way I could do this for 5 hours. I'm going to die. So that's kind of what it felt like. And then the other thing that happens is, which I think I mentioned, is ayahuasca typically causes people to purge. And so that's just, they give you a bucket. So everybody has their own puke bucket basically next to them. And I was expecting that. My father had explained all of that to me about his process. He shared a lot of his process with me when he did ayahuasca multiple times. So I knew that purging was part of it. And I did another type of plant medicine called combo, which was all about the purging as well. So I knew that that was going to be part of it. And I had my puke bucket next to me. And that first night, I was the first one to purge. Like I could feel it building up and building up and building up. And then it happened and I was the first one. And what often happens, and he explained this beforehand too, is that once one person purges, it kind of sets off other people. But what was so beautiful was once I started purging, he came over to me, the medicine man came over to me with this like rattle fan thing and was saying stuff and just kind of just being with me through the process of purging. And it felt very different than like purging, like, when you're sick or whatever, and you're just like hanging over the toilet bowl. It didn't feel like that. It felt like a cleansing. It felt almost kind of violent, like how intense it was. But because of the music and because of him rattling and doing his thing, like he was making these sounds and stuff around me and stuff like that, I just felt so incredibly taken care of and held through the process. Anyway, so that was really cool. And then after I purged, a little time went by and he came back to ask me if I wanted more medicine. And at that time, the visuals were really, really intense. And so I didn't feel like I wanted more or needed more for any reason. So I said no. He offered it twice. I said no both times. By about like 10 o'clock, I would say, I could tell that the medicine was starting to wear off. Again, I had only had that one starter dose. So there was a bathroom that we could get up and use if we needed to. And I had gotten up to go to the bathroom a couple of times. And I got up this one time and I could just tell there was a night light in the bathroom. So it wasn't like you're in bright light looking in the mirror when you're on the medicine. They keep it very subdued. But like I could tell that at this one time that I got up to go to the bathroom that the medicine was kind of wearing off. Like I just didn't feel completely normal, but I definitely didn't feel like I was in it the way that other people were, because a lot of people in the room had taken second and third doses at this point. So when I got back to my spot, I ended up asking him for another dose. And he warned me when he gave me this dose that because it was so late, he had already offered second and third doses to others, and everybody was already like, had been done for a while with taking any more doses of anything. So he warned me that, he would give me another dose, but he warned me that I might not be done when the ceremony is finished and the music stops. And I said okay to that. And then I took a second dose. So the second dose was super intense and I could feel like the nausea coming back again. And then I purged again. And at that point, everybody else was done purging. Like I was in the beginning phases of this round and everybody else was kind of coming down and settling into the downward slope of the night. And so he came over to me and helped me as I was purging. And somehow he's able to tell when you're done purging. He takes your bucket and gives you a clean bucket. And every single time he did this over the 2 nights that I was there, I always felt like I wasn't done purging, like he shouldn't be taking my bucket yet because he's going to need to clean 2 buckets. But somehow he just knows. He's been doing this long enough where he can just tell. So he gives me a clean bucket, but I still think I'm going to purge some more. And then I end up like hugging that bucket. That with that second dose, I felt nauseous all night long. I had the bucket in front of me all night long, but I never purged again. So I guess he definitely just knows. But what happened with the second dose, as the nausea would come up, I kept being told, and again, people see Mother Aya, Grandmother Ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca, Mother Aya, Grandmother Aya, whatever you want to call her. People see her in different forms. A lot of times she shows up in the form of a reptile or whatever. I didn't actually see her, but I was being told things, and I guess I was being told things by her. And one of the things I kept being told was to write it out, write it out, write it out. And I knew that she wasn't talking about the nausea. Like I knew she was talking about my life and the things that are going on in my life right now. And then she said, it gets better than you can imagine. And again, like I think she was talking about the journey that I was on that night with the medicine, but also about my life. Write it out. It gets better than you can imagine. To me, that was super profound because I have a hard time imagining something better than anything I can imagine. I've had a couple people say that to me. What if your future is better than anything you could possibly imagine? It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. But that's what she was saying to me. It gets better than you can imagine. So to me, that was super comforting because, what I'm imagining doesn't feel better, right? So it was like, okay, here's a voice coming from beyond, the great beyond, telling me it gets better than you can imagine. And she also kept telling me that it's okay to let go all the way. It's okay to let go all the way. I've done a lot of letting go in my life in the last couple of years, and I know I haven't let go all the way to some things. And so she just kept saying, it's okay to let go all the way. I'm here. I've got you. And my whole experience on that first night was really about trusting and allowing over and over and over. And it was perfect because in these lessons and verses that I do in the Tao Te Ching, that's what the Tao Te Ching is about. That's the main thing that I've been getting from that work, which I've been doing every single day since Thanksgiving, has been about trusting and allowing and surrendering, right? So this experience with the ayahuasca was the same thing. It was just really about trusting and allowing and surrendering. And I kept getting a really strong message that kept saying, you matter. You matter. That was super profound to me too, because I know that on a certain level, but there's part of me that feels like that's not the case in some ways, in some areas of my life or whatever. So that was really, really, really beautiful. And I just kept taking deep breaths through the nausea. Every time I would feel like I was going to throw up, I would hear, ride it out. And I would ride it out. And then eventually I just felt immense sadness. And I was just feeling deep, deep, deep grief about, my personal life circumstances. And again, I was just being told to trust and allow the grief. It's okay to grieve. And this was huge for me too, because I don't like grieving. I don't want to grieve. I don't want to feel my pain. And I have something in me that says, you have to just like push through. And this was, here I was being told, like, allow it. It's okay. It's okay to allow it. And then I was also told that it's not my job to take care of everyone and that the weight of the world is not on my shoulders. And I have this thing in me, and I think a lot of us have it, especially if you're a mother, where, you just have like this quality in you that makes you feel like you have like this mama bear energy, and you just feel like you want to take care of everyone. Even in the ceremony space, when people were crying or people were throwing up, like I wanted to help them. And this voice kept telling me, it's not your job to take care of everyone else. It's not your job. And again, that was profound too. And then I saw myself, my mom, who, in case you don't know, my mom died when I was 18. She was 43 at the time in 1986. And I saw her, and it was me and her and Mother Ayahuasca, 3 mothers working in unison. And I was, just being told that I will always be a nurturing mother. That part of me is never going to change. And there I was with my mother and Mother Ayahuasca, and just in this mother energy, being reminded that this mother energy is something that we get to carry with us for our entire lives, regardless of any circumstances that are going on in our lives. One other thing that happened in that first night was, so I have a ring that I wear on my right hand that is made out of crushed black diamonds that was given to me as an award for the work that I do in the world with my business, where a percentage of all of the sales that I generate get contributed to a charity called Feed My Starving Children. And the ring that I wear signifies, I was given this ring after I had contributed over 5,000 meals to starving children, 5,000 days worth of meals to starving children all over the world. And so I wear this ring every day, and it's what I love most about my work is that I get to contribute in this way. And I love the ring because before I got the ring, I was given a trophy. When I crossed the 500 meal mark, I was given this beautiful, beautiful trophy. But the trophy isn't something that I get to just carry around with me and see all the time. The ring is always on my hand, and it's very significant to me. And one of the things that happened on that first night in the ceremony was that the ring, I opened my eyes at one point. My hands looked really weird, like kind of fuzzy, almost like lights almost, but like super fuzzy, glowing lights. But then the ring on my right hand was super, super, super bright. It was like this super bright light. It was very significant. And I was getting this message about how I know that this, like I said, is the most significant thing in my heart about the work that I do. And I have pictures of these kids on my desk and all of this stuff. But the message that I was getting that night when I saw the ring like shining during my journey, and the message that I was getting was that you don't even comprehend how deep this work is that you're doing with these children, and how much it matters, and how much you matter. And then those words, you matter, kept coming back over and over. You matter, you matter, you matter. And then I had this vision where I saw 5,000 kids like standing in a line in front of me, coming up to me to get their meal. These kids that were malnutrition, like hadn't eaten in a really long time, and they were in a line, and they were coming to me to be fed. And I was crying. It was just like, oh my gosh, like I know that this work is significant. I know that at the core of my being, but this visual that I got during my journey was so profound, to actually see these kids coming to me to get their food, and to realize how much I actually do matter for them, and how much each of us matters in the work that we do in such a big way. Like I really saw that in a different way about how interconnected we all are, and how much each of us matters in such a big way to the entire ecosystem and to the entire universe. And so anyway, that was just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful vision that I had around my ring. So that was kind of the gist of the first night. But what happened was, because I took that second dose so late, like so much later than everybody else had taken any doses, when the ceremony ended, and the ceremony ends when the music stops, right? The music, like I said, kind of carries the ceremony, and it kind of peaks and then slows down at the end. And everybody's kind of giggling. You can tell everybody's kind of coming out of it, and there might be a little bit of conversation going on across the room between people or whatever. And when that started happening, I was still deep, deep, deep in the medicine because I took my dose so much later than everyone else. So every time a song would end, I would think to myself, please let another song come on. Please let another song come on, because I didn't want it to end, because I wasn't ready for it to end, because I was still deep in the medicine. Anyway, it ended up ending. And then the facilitator says, if you want to stay in your space, you can stay in your space. This is a quiet space. Anybody that's finished that wants to get up and talk can go down to the kitchen and have conversations there. And we're going to leave this a quiet space for anybody that wants to remain. Now, at that point, I was the only one that was still in the medicine, because like I said, I took a dose later than anybody else. And I wanted to just stay there. But I also remembered that I was on this other guy's mattress, and that was his bed, and he might want to go to sleep. It's like 2:00 in the morning at this point. So I can't just like stay there because I need to give him his bed. So I got up to go move down to my bed, which was downstairs, and he helped me carry my stuff. I had a couple of blankets, I had a couple of pillows, I had my puke bucket, and a couple of other things, my journal, a couple of other things. And so he helped me carry everything down, and I went down and put everything in my bedroom, and everybody else was hanging out in the kitchen and, just kind of talking about their experience and everything like that. I wasn't in a place to be able to do that because I was still like really, really in the medicine. So I just kind of wanted to be in my own space, but I ended up trying to take off my jewelry because I wanted to just like get in my bed and stay in my bed until morning or whatever. And I didn't want to sleep with all these necklaces around my neck or whatever. And this one necklace that Brooklyn had given me, the clasp was stuck in the chain and I couldn't get it off. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm in the medicine and I can't comprehend what I'm doing. So I went into the bathroom and like turned on the light, which was like a fluorescent light, which was a bad idea. I do not recommend that if you're on plant medicine to go in fluorescent light. But I did that. And I was looking in the mirror and I still couldn't get it off. So I was just, for whatever reason, it was important to me that I got it off. So I ended up walking into the kitchen and asking for help. And a few different people tried to get this necklace off my neck, and it wouldn't come off my neck. Multiple people tried and they said, yeah, the way that the clasp is, it's just stuck. And then somebody said, I think Mother Aya doesn't want you to take it off. It was my Phoenix necklace. But then I was like, but what if I choke in the night? What if it strangles me? Is somebody going to check on me? And I really wanted it to come off. And then finally this one guy walked over and just was able to easily get it off. So that was a relief. And then I went into my bed and I was just still journeying by myself. And that was my least favorite part about the first night, was that I took that dose so late so that I had to do this journey by myself. I really liked it a lot more when I was in a room with other people that were also journeying. And I had my puke bucket with me. I never ended up needing it again, but I just kind of felt nauseous all night and just weird, and was by myself in my room. And it lasted until about 4 or 5 a.m. And the ceremony had ended at like 1:30 a.m. So, there were several more hours that I was just journeying by myself. And then to top it off, at around 3 a.m., somewhere around like maybe between 2 and 2:30, everybody went to bed. So it was just, the house was quiet. And then right around 3 a.m., the smoke detector started chirping right outside of my bedroom. And it was chirp. You know how like smoke detectors, like they chirp and then there'll be like a delay for a few minutes and then they'll chirp again. So it was like every 3 minutes it would chirp. And I was laying in the bed thinking, I need to get up and deal with this. But then I was also thinking, well, I don't know if that's such a good idea, because number one, I have ayahuasca in my body right now, and I'm not really in a space where I should be like trying to climb a ladder. Not to mention, this is not my house, and I really shouldn't be tampering with things in this house. So that voice came back and said, trust and allow. Like, this was still part of my journey of trusting and allowing. So I was just like laying in my bed saying, trust and allow, trust and allow. And every 3 minutes, the smoke detector would chirp. And then all of a sudden, I heard like really quiet footsteps, and then the chirping stopped. And I knew somebody had dealt with it. And it was such a cool reminder about trusting and allowing and knowing that everything is handled. And in the morning, so my bedroom was the only bedroom downstairs. Everybody else's bedrooms were upstairs on the same level as where the ceremony room was. So I didn't even know anybody else was on my level, but it turned out that one of the guys that didn't have a bedroom because he was only there for one night was sleeping on the couch outside of my bedroom. So he's the one I found out in the morning that got up and took the battery out of the smoke detector or whatever he did. But again, the theme of the night was trust and allow, trust and allow, trust and allow. Anyway, after that journey, I'd been feeling kind of disappointed because my experience wasn't what I was hoping for based on what other people had shared with me about their experiences, including my friend that had gone a month before me. Like, she told me, you are going to have so much clarity by the end of the weekend. Like, you're going to know the answers to all of these things that I've been trying to navigate in my life and stuff like that. And I didn't feel like I got that. I shared with you some of the things that I did get, which was super comforting and awesome. But I didn't really feel like I got answers or clarity about anything concrete. So I realized, maybe I wasn't supposed to, because again, Mother Aya gives you not what you want, but what she thinks you need. So maybe I wasn't supposed to, or maybe I did. And it just looked different for me than it looks for others. One of the things that the facilitator was saying to me during my purge, when I took the second dose, and it was really, really intense, the purging on the second dose was really intense. And one of the things he kept saying to me when he was helping me through that was, she's cleaning you out. You're doing great work. She's cleaning you out. Let her clean you out. And as I was lying in my bed, journeying by myself, after everyone went to bed that night, I kept getting a message that maybe my journey on this night was about just allowing her to clean me out. Like, maybe that's all that I needed on the first night, was allowing her to create a vessel in which for her to work, because I still had another night left. So in the morning, everybody gets up and we have breakfast together, and then we have an integration circle. And in the integration circle, everybody has an opportunity. There's a talking stick. And so whoever's ready to share can grab the stick and can share whatever they want to share about their experience from the night before. And then the facilitator goes last. So in the integration circle, when it was my turn to share, I was sharing how, I shared about how I disliked being the last one up, journeying by myself, and how I wish I hadn't taken that dose so late. But how I was also feeling like I didn't go as deep as I needed to, maybe because the doses were spread out like that. And so the facilitator said that he was going to give me a little bit. He said, maybe I'll give you a little bit more tonight, right off the bat. And so that sounded good to me at first. But then as like other people were sharing and stuff, and then after, everybody was done, I shared again. And I said, one thing that I didn't mention was with the starter dose, when I started to see the visuals, it felt like a lot for me to handle. And I don't know if I want more. Like, I don't know if I can handle more than that, what I experienced that night. So then he said, well, the other thing that we could do instead is that I could give you a smaller dose to start so that it doesn't get as intense. And then after about an hour, you can take another smaller dose so that you're actually taking more in two smaller doses, but early enough in the night that you won't still be in the medicine when the ceremony ends. And he was explaining to me that these lighter experiences can actually be very, very, very beautiful. And that just because you don't feel like you went as deep as some people went, that doesn't make it any less beneficial. It's just it's a different experience. Like, everybody's experience is different. So he was explaining, like, taking these smaller doses is a really beautiful way to do this. So that sounded great to me. But then what ended up happening was throughout the day, so after our integration circle, some people went and took naps, some people went on a walk. I ended up hanging out with two of the women from my ceremony and getting to know them. And one of the things that I kept saying was that I wasn't sure what to do for the second night. Like I wasn't sure if I should do this 2 smaller doses or if I should just take one big dose to kick it off and just go super deep. And I was kind of torn between those 2 options. Anyway, I'll get back to that in a second. I just want to go on a quick tangent here to share about these women. So one of the women that I was getting to know that day, I didn't really know anybody very well going into the ceremony because we all arrived there on Friday night and shortly after we started the ceremony, but we had all day on Saturday to spend time together. And so on Friday night, the woman I was in the corner up against a wall. And so I had a person on one side of me, and it was this woman who I barely introduced myself to her. And the next thing you know, we were doing the medicine. So we knew nothing about each other, right? And during the ceremony, I loved having her next to me because she was laughing and laughing and laughing. The entire night she was laughing, and she kept saying, "It's so funny. It's so funny." And she just kept laughing. And that really helped me, especially when I was like, kind of freaking out a little bit. Like I could hear her laughing, and that really helped me. Like I said, I knew nothing about her going into that. All I knew is that her laughter helped me, right? But on that Saturday, when we got to spend time together, we got to, get to know each other a little bit more. And I learned a lot about these 2 women that I was in ceremony with and why they were there and what they were wanting to heal and so forth. And that woman that was next to me was sharing with me that she recently lost her husband in an accident. And they had 2 daughters, have 2 daughters. And anyway, she was sharing about that experience. And it was so profound to me knowing her story after having heard her laughing and laughing and laughing, talking about how everything was so funny. And I had asked her, like, what was so funny? What was it that you were laughing at? And she said, everything. She said, everybody's problems, just everything to me was funny. And I was like, that is just so amazing that if somebody that's going through what she's going through could see things that way, that kind of gives me permission to see things that way too. Right. So that was super, super, super profound. And then the facilitator, so as we were getting ready, it's getting closer to the time to go into the second night. We had a lot of downtime that first day, like I said, which was beautiful. And then we were getting ready to go into the second night. And then my dad's friend came. So I finally got to see him. Again, listen to episode 53 to hear more of the backstory on that and who he is and how this whole thing came to be. Because he was a significant role in me ending up going there to do it and everything like that. So he wasn't able to be there Friday night, but he came Saturday night. And like I was saying earlier, like that felt like a negative thing to me at first. But in hindsight, like I said, I think everything is always working in our favor, even if we can't see it at the time. And I feel like maybe it was a gift that he wasn't there the first night, because if he had been there the first night, I think I would have kind of gravitated just towards him, and maybe I wouldn't have opened up as much to the other people. Maybe I wouldn't have had the conversation that I had with the guy that had the same chronic illness as my friend's daughter, and all of the things that happen. Just being there completely solo forced me, to open up more with other people. So I do feel like it was meant to be that way. And then he came the next night. It was so, so, so good to see him. I hadn't seen him in so many years, and since, long before my father passed away. And he was super close with my dad and had all these amazing stories that he shared with me about doing ayahuasca with my dad multiple times. And he shared some specific things that my dad did and said when he did ayahuasca, which was, I knew that my dad did it. I didn't even know that he had done it with this particular guy. So it was just so cool. And my dad told me his own perspective, but it was so cool to hear somebody else's version of my dad's experience. So that was really, really special. And then, so I was up in the ceremony space helping him get his spot set up, or sitting with him while he was getting his spot set up. And the facilitator was there, and I said to him, I'm still confused. Like, I don't know if I should take a bigger dose tonight or if I should go with the two smaller doses like you mentioned. And I just don't know which would be best. And he looked at me and he said, how about this? How about if you surrender completely and just leave it up to me? And I said, okay. And that was that. I didn't have to think about it anymore. And it just felt so much better. And again, this whole process for me was about surrendering and trusting and allowing. And so it just felt like part of the process for me. Now we're going into the second ceremony. Like I said, I left it up to the teacher or the facilitator to decide what kind of a dose to give me. So I didn't know what he was going to give me. And we went around and stated our intentions again. I did hape again, which helped ground me again. And then he went and got the medicine. And when he handed me my cup, I felt like it seemed like it might have been a little bit less than the first night, just by the amount that was in the cup. But he did say the first night that he did add quite a bit of water just to make it the taste a little easier. So I wasn't sure if it was just less watered down or if it was less. But like I said, I just surrendered and trusted that it was the perfect amount or whatever and drank it. And then the music started, and it's such a cool thing. Like, the music is, at least for me, I think for everybody, but definitely for me, the music was such a huge part of the experience. And this particular facilitator was just so dialed in with the music. It was just so good. And so, he would sing along with it a little bit and play his drum. Some of it was like tribal words that, aren't like English language, easy to understand words, and other songs had actual lyrics that you could understand. But the music just definitely kind of made the ceremony. And I was sitting there listening to the music, just waiting for the medicine to kick in. And again, I could feel the nausea starting. I didn't have as intense psychedelic visuals as I did the first night, but I definitely had nausea. And so eventually I purged, and the facilitators were there, helping me through that. And it was just amazing. Like, again, like that experience, for whatever reason, the purging part of it for me felt really good. And I know it's part of it because it's one of the ways that we release the negative energy and the negative karma and the toxicity in our body. And I mean, people heal actual like physical illnesses with this medicine as well. It's not just a spiritual thing. It's medicine on every level. So for whatever reason, the purging for me felt really good. It was definitely kind of violent and intense, but it was short-lived, and it just felt so good to do it. And I know people always talk about it being like the color black when it comes out, because ayahuasca, that's like the color of ayahuasca when you drink it. But it was so dark, like it was dark. There were no lights on. So I couldn't see it. I have no idea what it looked like. And once again, as soon as I was done, and I didn't even think I was done yet, but as soon as I felt like I was done, as soon as the facilitator felt like I was done, he took my bucket and gave me a fresh bucket. And once again, I didn't feel like I was completely done purging, but he just had a sense and kind of knew when people were done. And so he got up and left me alone, and I was done. Like I didn't purge again. And so then what happened once I purged, what was really cool was, once again, I had the same woman next to me as the first night, and she was laughing, and we were exchanging, like we were kind of like laughing together a little bit. Like once I purged, I felt really good, and I was just like in this amazing place. And her and I were kind of laughing back and forth, or she would say something like, "Amy, effed up stuff happens. What?" And she would just start laughing. And then I would start laughing. And it was just I can't explain it. It felt really, really, really good. And so Anyway, the music was amazing. And I was going into this place where I was in such bliss, like the most bliss I think I've probably ever felt in my entire life. And when the teacher came around to see if I wanted more medicine, he was offering people more medicine, and a lot of people were taking him up on it. And when he asked me, I thought, I just didn't want to ruin how I felt. Like I felt better than I've probably ever felt in my entire life. And I just wanted to be there. So I said no. And I just, stayed in my bliss. And then I started getting, things were being said to me again. I had my journal next to me both nights. And although it was pitch dark in the room, every once in a while I would grab my journal and I couldn't even see the pages. So I couldn't tell if I was writing on top of a page that I already had writing on it or not. Sometimes I would get this loud, voice would come and say stuff to me that I just wanted to write down. And so what it was saying to me on this second night was, the worst is over. The best is yet to come. And again, the messages that I got throughout both nights of my journey seemed like they were relevant to the journey itself, but also to my life. And so as I was getting that message, I realized I'm not nauseous anymore. I put my bucket down, which I never did the first night. The first night I just felt nauseous the entire time. The second night, eventually, I just didn't feel nauseous anymore. And I was able to actually lay down because I wasn't hugging the bucket. The first night I sat up the whole time because I was just afraid that I was going to throw up. But the second night I got rid of my bucket. I laid down. I had this voice telling me the worst is over, the best is yet to come. And then it kept saying, it's all good. It's all good. And then again, just feeling this bliss. I've never experienced, I just felt so taken care of in a way that I've never experienced in my entire life. And then the voice said, in the midst of my grief, there is bliss. Meanwhile, the girl next to me was laughing, and she was grieving too, and, as I explained earlier, she just recently lost her husband, and a different type of grief than my grief. But I was if she can be laughing, then I can experience bliss even in the midst of grief. And that was a huge, profound aha moment for me, because I've been in so much grief and so sad, and in so many ways that I've to the point where I've had trouble functioning sometimes. And I have this guilt about allowing myself to feel good, because it just doesn't seem like anybody should feel good in the face of my situation. And this voice kept saying that there is bliss in the midst of the grief. And it kept saying, allow yourself to experience bliss. Allow yourself to experience bliss. And then the teacher came over again to ask me if I wanted more medicine. And there was part of me that felt because I could hear what was going on in the room, and I could hear people going really deep and moaning and yelling and purging. And just, there was a lot of really intense stuff going on in the room. And where I was at that second night was in a much lighter, blissed out space. I wasn't in the same space as those people that were doing that. Now, most of them had taken multiple doses at this point, and I had only taken my one dose. So I started to second guess myself and think, maybe I need more medicine. Maybe I'm not supposed to feel this good. Maybe I need to go deeper, and maybe it's time for me to take another dose. So again, the voice was saying to me, and I know this because I have I was writing, I had my journal in my lap at this point, and it would say something and I would write it, and it said, allow yourself to experience bliss. And then it said, you don't always have to go deeper. You don't need more. And I was oh my gosh. And it kept saying that over and over again. You don't always have to go deeper. Even in my journey that night, but also in my life, I'm the type of person that always feels there's always access to more. There's always a way to go deeper in my spiritual growth, in my personal growth, in my healing, in my life, in my relationships, everything. I'm a deep person, right? So I always feel like I need to go deeper. And it kept saying, you don't always have to go deeper. And I was like, whoa. And then it said, you don't need more. And that was so profound to me too, because I was like, yeah, why do we, or at least I always feel like I need more of something, whether it's more medicine because I don't feel like I'm going as deep as the other people in the ceremony, or more whatever. Like, I think a lot of us are just programmed to always feel like we need more. And so that was very profound to me. Like, you don't need more. And all of a sudden I just became very peaceful with where I was at, and like, oh, I can just feel good tonight. Like, this is what I came here to do. I came here to just feel good. And then the voice said, it's okay to feel good. And that felt so good to me because, like I said, I have had like guilt about feeling good because of the amount of intense stuff that's been going on in my life. And it's like, how can anyone possibly feel good in the face of that? And here I was like feeling like I was getting permission from God, the universe, Mother Aya, my higher self, whatever it was, saying over and over, it's okay to feel good. It's okay to feel good. And I was crying with like joy as I was like receiving that message. And I remember, and I wrote this in my journal, I wrote, I can feel my soul healing, because I was laying there, and by not asking for more and not needing to go deeper and allowing myself to just be completely like nurtured in the way that I felt like I was being nurtured that night, the whole experience, the people around me, the music, the medicine, how comfortable I was just laying on my mat, and just everything about it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can feel my soul healing. And I didn't know that that was even possible. And it was just like, whoa, like my soul is actually healing. That was just like really good confirmation for me about, because I've been hearing, this is one of the reasons I decided to do ayahuasca in the first place, is because I've heard so many stories about how people heal, on such a deep level from this medicine. And I felt what that was like. And like going back to where, everybody says she doesn't give you what you want. She gives you what she knows that you need. And so although I didn't go as deep as the others, in some of the ways that people were, whatever they were experiencing that night, based on what I could hear them experiencing and what I found out when we did our sharing circle in the morning, my experience was completely different. But I was like, maybe she just knew that that's what I needed. Like, I needed to be treated gently. I needed to be nurtured and guided and protected and loved, because I haven't been feeling that way for a while in my life. And it felt really, really, really good. One of the things that I really got from that was, okay, so I met Mother Aya. I had my experience with ayahuasca. Two very different experiences on the first night and the second night. But one of the big takeaways that I got, huge takeaway, is that I really believe that this medicine could be a path for me long term. I can see why people do it over and over again. And, the facilitator out in Colorado facilitates every month. And a lot of these people come every month, and I can see why it's like a life path for people, because I can see that there's access to such a deep level of healing. It's been said that one ayahuasca ceremony is the equivalent of like 10 years of therapy. I think it's even better than therapy. I've gone to therapy for a lot of my life, and I've never had like anything like majorly profound happen from therapy. Therapy for me has always been more of like support to get me through a situation or, a trauma or some event that happened or something like that. Whereas this felt like I said, I could feel my soul healing, and therapy has never felt like that to me. So I can see that this is like doing this in an ongoing way in my life might really provide some deep, deep, deep healing for me. And now that my nerves have been settled around the medicine, because I was so nervous going into it. I mean, the first night I was so nervous. And then the second night, like all I could think to myself is, I can't believe I'm doing this again. Like I was so nervous after the first night that I was like, I can't believe I'm going to go through this again tonight. Like, what am I, crazy? But once I did, and I experienced what I experienced, and I experienced like the depths of the tough love that other people in the room were getting. And we talked about it in our circle in the morning. And having been there for all of that, what I really got was, I'm ready to do it again. I'm ready to really go deep in the medicine. Like I have a trust for the medicine that I didn't have before I had this experience. And I feel like, I've been cleaned out in the way that I needed to be cleaned out. And she introduced herself to me in a gentle way that made me feel loved and nurtured. And so now I trust her in the spirit of this medicine and this plant to take me to another experience next time in a way that I didn't have that trust before I went through this experience. And so that's how my second night went. And it was just, it was incredible. And then, when it was over, we went outside and we were looking up at the stars, and it was just, I was so blissed out, and I was blissed out for days afterwards. I was really tired because like the first night I didn't even really sleep. And so when I got back to my friend's house from the ceremony, we went out to see some music, and like I took a shower, I went out and watched some music and stuff like that. But I was in bed asleep by 7:00. Like I was so tired, and I slept for 12 hours. Like I slept till 7:00 the next morning. And I really needed that. So that was amazing. But it was great. Like in the morning before we left, we had breakfast again, and we had our integration circle again. In the circle, again, people got to go around and share their experiences. And it was really cool to hear some other people's experiences and really get like the underlying message that I heard like in different ways from different people. Like one woman had the experience of giving birth, and she was like moaning and yelling and stuff throughout the night. And she said that was the most intense ayahuasca. It was like her 12th or 15th time or something. She had done it with other facilitators, but she was explaining why she preferred this facilitator and how it felt different, because she felt like we were all in it together. Like we were all interconnected by a fascia. And she had the experience of giving birth. And she's like, I don't know if you guys realize this, but we're healing like generations here. Like she's like, we're healing our ancestors, we're healing our children. And that was kind of like what her experience was about, which I've heard that before. So that was really cool. And anyway, it was just really cool to hear some of the big aha moments that people had. And then the facilitator, when he closed the circle, he was basically just saying, we're not victims. We don't have to be victims in our lives. Like, that's not what we came here to be. We can just be. It was just profound. Like the conversation in the circle was profound. The relationships that were formed over the weekend were profound. I miss everybody so much. It was hard to leave and come back to North Carolina after being in Colorado, because the people, other than me, they all live in Colorado. And so what's cool is they do stuff together to like keep the healing going. It's when you are committed to a path of deep healing, like anybody that shows up to a ceremony like this is obviously, then there's just this bond that's formed, not to mention that going through that experience together creates a bond as well. But they have like an integration circle every week, and they have like, they go on like hikes together. Some of them are climbers, and so they go climbing together, and they, there's just more of a tribe feeling. And the facilitator was actually talking about the importance of that. He said, one of the biggest, most important things when you're on this path is to make sure you stay connected with your tribe, and how important it is. And he facilitates a lot of different opportunities for people to be involved with community stuff, because he facilitates not just ceremonies, but he facilitates some other cool events as well, or invites people to other cool events as well. So he is a big advocate for the tribe component. And that part of it was really hard for me to leave those people and come back to a place where I have my one friend here that did it the month before me. But other than that, like I feel like, a little bit of a fish out of water here. But what was really cool was when I was hugging him goodbye, the facilitator, he said to me that if I could get 8 people together in North Carolina for 2 nights, so any combination. So just to give you an example, so the ceremony in Colorado, we had 8 people each night plus the 2 facilitators, so a total of 10 people. But 5 of us were there for both nights. And then we had 3 people that were just there for Friday night. We had 3 people that were just there for Saturday night. So both nights there were 8 people participating in the ceremony, but they weren't all there for both nights. So he said any combination of 8 people for 2 nights, if you can find 8 people, I will come to North Carolina. And he told me a little bit about the logistics of that. And so now that's really awesome. So I've already started talking to some people because I have an amazing community that I'm a part of here through my soul center and all the things that I do here. So it looks like it's probably not going to be that hard to find enough people to bring him here. And what I love about that is then we can create that kind of a tribe here where we can, and if we have enough people that want to do it regularly like I do, we can just bring him here regularly. I really loved this facilitator. I loved his energy. I loved the music that he provided as part of the ceremony and just the container that he held. I just, that was a big part of it for me when I was doing all of my research over all of these years. And I was told like the facilitator is really, really, really important. It's really important to be with somebody that you trust, that you feel held and supported by. And so I had a really good experience with the facilitation aspect of it. So I would be really excited, will be really excited once we can start doing some gatherings here in North Carolina, some ceremonies here in North Carolina. That'll be really, really, really cool. So anyway, that's kind of the gist of how my ayahuasca ceremonies went. And I know this has been kind of a long episode, but, I just really wanted to do it some justice. I didn't want to leave anything out. Now that I've been back for a few weeks, I guess the other thing I'll say about it is I definitely got a long-term result from it. Like, I don't think I'll ever be the same in a good way. I feel more peaceful. I've gotten comments from people saying that they just feel like this next level love just like pouring off of me, and which was surprising to me because I felt like I was like that before, but I've been told that it's at a different level now. It definitely shakes some stuff up too. Like I feel like I'm healing some even deeper stuff now as well. I think maybe it stirred some stuff up for me to heal. And so I've been doing that as well. It's not like, one and done and I'm blissed out for the rest of my life or anything like that. But I definitely got a lot from it. And I'm not going to sit here and say I suggest it for every single person, because I do agree that it's something that you need to be called to do. That's what's been said about it. In fact, the facilitator that I did it with, he gets on Zoom with every single person before he'll let them come to a ceremony, because he wants to ask some questions. And, there's some things he needs to make sure that you're not on certain medications and things like that. But he also likes to see what people's intentions are, because if somebody hasn't been called to do the medicine, but it's being suggested to them by their therapist or by their husband or something like that, he won't let them come. He said, you have to want to do it. You have to be called. And like for me, like I said, my dad really wanted me to do it. I don't know if you listened to the previous episode I did about this, but my dad really wanted me to do it and thought that it would be very, very beneficial for me. But at the time, I was not called to do it. So for me to go at that time and do it because my dad was suggesting it, I would not have gotten the same result as seeking it out myself and being called to do it myself. So that's why I would never say like, everybody should go do this. It's not for everybody. If you are curious about it or have a calling, then I would suggest maybe taking the next step and finding a facilitator, talking to a facilitator. What was great about this facilitator was Like I said, he got on Zoom. He spent an hour on Zoom with me just answering my questions and stuff. And because I had been researching other places to do it and feeling hesitant, like once I talked to him, I knew I wasn't hesitant anymore. Like I just felt like I was in such good hands with him. And so it's a process. The whole thing is a process. I would never say, even if you do have a calling to do it, I would never say just go like sign up at some random place where you know nothing about it and you haven't done your due diligence. Because I do, after having gone through it for 2 nights, I will say the facilitation is a big part of it. And you have to feel like you can trust that person and that you're being held and nurtured. That was a big part of it for me, of why my experience was so good, was because I felt like that. I didn't feel unsafe in any way at all. And I think that's really important. So if you are feeling called, I would say maybe just start taking some steps to learn more or talk to a facilitator and get your questions answered. If I can answer any questions for you, I'm happy to. And if you live in North Carolina and you want to be part of what I'm going to attempt to create in my community here, definitely reach out and let me know. We can put you on the list for that. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you are somebody like me who is just like binging on all of the content you can find about ayahuasca to try to decide if it's something that you want to do or not, I'm hopeful that maybe this episode helped you in some way. You know, I'm here. So if there's anything that I can do, like I said, to answer any additional questions or anything like that, there's nothing I would rather do than help you on your way, on your journey. This is a very, very powerful modality. It's a very powerful plant medicine, sacred ancient plant medicine. And I'm so happy that I finally took this step. That's been a long time coming, and I definitely see some profound healing in my future by continuing to walk this path. So that's what I have to say about that. If there's anything I didn't cover that you're curious about or anything like that, just let me know. You can find me all over social media at Amy Starr Allen, or on Instagram and TikTok, Affiliate Marketing Junkie. You know, it's easy to reach out to me. So if you have questions, let me know. If I need to do an additional episode based on questions, I can do that. Or if it's just, a one-off question that I can answer for you, I'm happy to do that as well. So again, thank you for listening. Please share this with others who might benefit from learning more about this sacred plant medicine. If you think this episode would be helpful, I would love to help as many people as possible with this information. It has been life-changing for me, and I would love to pass that along. So definitely share this with as many people as you think would benefit from it. And thank you for being here. And I love you, and I will see you in the next episode. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please share it with your friends and your followers on social media. I would also love it if you would subscribe to the show and leave a review. Also, be sure and pick up my free guide that contains 4 key mindset shifts that will help you get into alignment. It also comes with 20 daily affirmations to elevate your mind and your business. You can pick that up right now on my website at amystarallen.com.